everyone, it's your girl Jossie, aka J Renee, back at it again with another video. And so today's video, we're gonna be making my birthday dress. I mean, my birthday was definitely a month ago, back in December, and it's now January, but it's okay because you can still tell me happy birthday in the comments below, and I will respond to you with a thank you because I love you all. So without further ado, before we get into the video, make sure you like this video and then subscribe to my channel and then turn on my post notifications so you don't miss a video. Other than that, let's get right into the video. So this blazer I got from my late grandmother. She wore this to my mom's wedding. Yeah, it's kind of cute. It's a little old school, but we're gonna get it right. So what we're first gonna do is grab our seam ripper and rip it to pieces, literally ripping the whole thing to pieces. Just taking out all of the shoulder pads and excess buttons and notions and all the pretty stuff, ripping it all until all the pieces are like, you know, the base when you cut out pieces and stuff. And so some of the things that I couldn't seam rip, I just cut those seams and everything and took my time with it. Make sure I don't like rip any holes through the fabric, cutting off and ripping whatever stitches and seams that I could, taking off that pretty lace decoration. That was real easy. These are all the pieces. Surprisingly, it was a lot of pieces. It don't look like that when you put on the jacket, but I'm gonna iron down the edges where all the seams were so I can get as much fabric as I can get. So I'm gonna use some of the smaller pieces for the bodice. So if you haven't seen my video already making the bodice or this bustier type pattern, then you can go watch that. I'll link that in the description box or up here. And with these 4 pieces, I need to cut 2 of them. But since the bustier that I made before was a crop top, I'm adding 2 inches to the bottom, as you saw. And then I'm just going to cut it out with my rotary cutter. So for each of these pieces, I need 2 of them. The first one I'm going to do on one side, and then I'm going to flip the pattern over and add 2 inches to the bottom and cut it out again. So I'm going to do that to all 4 of the pieces. I have 2 front pieces, 2 front side pieces, and then 2 side back pieces and 2 back pieces. Take your time if you actually do this to remember to add the 2 inches to whatever pattern that you're using if you ever do this, because I forgot to add 2 inches to one of the patterns and I was like, oh man, I gotta start over. Didn't think I had enough material. So just make sure you are watching and paying attention. Now with all the pieces cut out, I'm going to put together the pieces as they go to make the bodice. So the front 2 pieces go together, then the side front pieces go to the front 2 center pieces, and so on. Just pin those at the edge all the way down, and they should match up quite nicely if you did it right, adding 2 inches to each of them. They should match up pretty perfectly. And I'm going to keep pinning until I have all the pieces down together. And so that's what it looks like when it's pinned. I'm going to finish pinning that one, and then we're going to sew that down. Going to our sewing machine, I am using a regular presser foot with a straight stitch with 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's what I had on my pattern, a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And so I'm just going to sew down all of those seams, contouring where there's like a curve, and then just a straight with using a straight stitch. And of course, after you sew down, make sure you iron down the seams open or to one side. I prefer them open, and do that with all the seams. Since this is a curve on like the bust part, I'm gonna use my little it's not an official tailor's ham. It's like a little, you know, those things that help you make curves and like sleeves and stuff. That's what that is. I forgot what it's called. It's almost like a tailor's ham, but not as thick, if you know what I mean. And then it should look all pretty on the inside. So here is how the bodice is looking so far with all the seams pretty. And now we have to do an inner lining for the bodice. So the same pieces that we cut for the bodice, we're going to do the same thing. So here I forgot to show you guys how I cut and sewed the pieces, but it was the same thing as I did for the outer lining. So here I also cut 1.5 by however long the bodice was, and I cut about 6 or 7 pieces of those, however many I needed for each seam, if that makes sense. So later you're gonna see exactly how many I cut and where they were placed. So they're all placed on the seam. This is for the boning. These are boning channels that we're gonna make here with the original fabric. I'm only using the original fabric because it's a lot thicker and it'll hold better with the boning inside for the lining. So as you can see there, I used 7 boning channels, and now I'm going to using my zip ties. I have 2 different sizes. Some of the sizes are for the bag pieces, and then the longer ones are for the center pieces. So I'm going to cut off the little, thing that makes the zip tie, and then shave down using a nail file the ends so they aren't as pointy and they don't stick out and hurt you while you're wearing the dress. And so once I do that, I'm going to cut to size exactly where I need the zip ties or boning and shave down all of them. It's going to take a little minute, but it's worth it. And then stick them right through. So when I sewed down the boning channels, I sewed down on one side at the very edge, then sewed at the top so it would close off at the top, and then down the opposite edge, which will leave some room for the boning channels. I cut 1.5 inch pieces by however long I needed them. So now your lining should be a lot more sturdy, and it's time to pair it with the outer shells. So we're gonna put the lining in the fashion fabric face to face, right sides together, and then pin at the seams. Pin at the seams and you'll do no wrong. Pin all the way around except for the bottom edge. We're not going to pin the bottom edge together. So just pin on the seams and on the sides as well. I'm going to sew all the way around, starting on that side edge using 1/2 inch seam allowance like usual, and just go all the way around, making sure that the boning or the zip ties are not in the way, because we don't want to hurt our sewing needle, and yeah, that's just not fun. So on the corners and curves, we're going to cut off some of the excess, and then on the curves we're going to make little slits so it can curve when we turn it right side out. So now let's do that. Turn that right side out. Yes, we love it. And then poke out the corners and the curved part where the bust is, and then we will soon iron it down. And here's our beautiful bustier, but we're gonna move on before we do anything else. It is now time for the skirt. So most of the big pieces that I have taken from that jacket, like the sleeves and the back pieces and some of the side panels, I'm going to shave them down to not equal squares or rectangles, but making sure all the sides are straight and not curved or have any type of form to them at all. So I'm just cutting them all to be like straight rectangles or squares or whatever. This is a pretty easy part. We're just gonna piece them together. I did like small, long, like short, long, short, long, to piece them together, which was easy. I'm gonna eventually cut them all short, but I just needed to lay them out to see how they would be put together. And so I'm gonna put right sides facing with however I like the layout, and pin the edges together so I can sew them down. And do that to all the pieces that you have, and then sew down on that edge 1/2 an inch for seam allowance. So now that we have all the pieces together, we're going to fold it in half and use the skirt. I'm using a skirt that is not very stretchy and doesn't have much give. I'm also using a hip curve ruler to make that curve like perfect almost. And because of the skirt that I was using was kind of tight and doesn't have much give, I took about an inch and a half seam allowance or extra, so I'd have a little space when I put the skirt on. So I'm going to put right sides together and sew down one side. The center seam is probably going to be where my zipper goes. So I went to go sew that side seam down. Now I'm going to attach the zipper. So the zipper is going to go like right in the middle where one of the pieces were put together, which was easy for me. So I'm going to put the zipper face down right on that seam, making sure my skirt is on the wrong side facing up. And then just pin my zipper to both sides. I'm making sure that the zipper is right in the center where the seam is. And then I'm going to pin the other side of the skirt all together, and let's sew that all down. So I'm first pinning the side of the skirt. Simple, easy, 1, 2, 3. And then for the zipper, I'm changed my foot to a zipper foot and making sure the zipper tab is pulled up. I always have the hardest time trying to do this zipper, so I pull down the zipper a little bit to sew a little bit, and then try to pull it back up kind of under the presser foot, and then keep going. So that's what I try to do. Hopefully it doesn't give you as much trouble as it gives me. So then when I get to the end of the zipper, I do a little 90-degree angle to do the end of it, and then go back up. My zipper here was 9 inches long, which is perfect for like a skirt zipper. Now I'm going to take my seam ripper and seam rip that whole seam until we get to the end of the zipper. So all the way down, we are going to seam rip until we get to the edge of the zipper, and then your zipper should work beautifully. The top edge of the skirt is fraying a lot, so I'm going to take it to my serger and just serge down that edge so it doesn't fray anymore, and so I won't get frustrated about it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that was easy. And so I did the same thing to the bodice. And now we're gonna pin the bodice and the skirt together. So with them both kind of right facing together on the one side, we're just gonna start at the center and pin all the way down to each side. So I start at the center of the skirt and the center of the bodice and pin that down, and then just pin down all the way on each side. It's okay if the skirt doesn't match up exactly with the bodice. Mine didn't, so we're gonna compensate for that later. Oh, and remember to hem the bottom of your skirt. I forgot to tell you that. Now let's just go sew that down beautifully. It looks great already. So now for the closure of the bodice, and we're going to use some eyelets or some grommets, whatever you want to call them. I have this little grommet kit that I got from Amazon. You can get one from anywhere, like your sewing store or whatever. I read the directions, and I know what to do. And so at first I thought I wanted the grommets 1 inch apart, but they were kind of large, so I just put them together and see what worked. And so 2 inches apart worked best for me, and I think I used 10 grommets total, 5 on each side, and that's what worked best. So I marked that from the center of the eyelets or grommets. I'm gonna use that interchangeably. And so with the kit, you take the little wooden thing and the little black thing and you hammer that down to make the hole, and then you take the grommet, the big part of the grommet down the little black thing, and then put the wash over top of it in between the fabric, and then hammer that down as well. So I'm gonna do that off camera because it's just a lot. I couldn't do it on the table. That's how it came out, really beautifully. I love this already. So now we have to make a string or tie for the grommets. So I cut about 2 inches from the lining fabric in strips, and so I'm just gonna pin the strips together and sew them down, and then sew it together on the long side and use my loop turner to loop it through. And so that's how they should look at the end when you have finished it. So then I'm going to tie my strings through, like, you know, shoelaces or whatever, and that's pretty much it. Once they're all finished, they're all done. And so I did my makeup because it was my birthday. That's me, hey. And so this is how the dress looked on. It's snatched. When I tell you I was snatched, I was snatched. And these are my looks. These pictures came out beautifully for my birthday. I took them myself, so yes. So that is all for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.